impact of the Great Depression on Germany. So, following the Wall Street crash of October 1929, the Great Depression emerged. Wall Street was a stock market in New York in the United States, and as a result of the crash, thousands of American firms and banks went bankrupt. So, in response to this, the USA withdrew loans and investments from around the world, and in 1930 slapped protectionist tariffs on trade. This had a great impact on the wider world. For example, in 1930, world trade fell by more than 60%. If we measure this in total wealth of nations, as found in GDP, this fell by 15%. As such, there was a catastrophic global fall in demand. So the Great Depression, as we have covered, began with the Wall Street crash, which happened in 1929. But what was the impact of the Great Depression? Due to Germany's reliance on the Dawes and Young plans, the Weimar Republic was badly affected by the Wall Street crash. The greatest withdrawal of investment from Germany was in late September 1930, and this in part explains why the extremist parties did so well in the 1930 election. Loans were an important source of finance for industry and agriculture, but German banks could not fill the gap and there was no credit to be found elsewhere. This led to the Great Depression hitting Germany, and in particular, it hit the middle classes extremely hard. We must remember, because of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany still had to pay reparations. By 1932, 18,000 farmers had gone bankrupt in Germany. In industry, 50,000 businesses were bankrupt between 1930 and 1932, and in 1931, 5 major banks were closed down. Unemployment was also a major issue in Germany. Unemployment rose from 600,000 people in 1928 to 1,600,000 in 1929. By 1930, this figure had doubled to 3 million, and by 1933 had doubled once more to 6 million. There were regional variations to this unemployment, with industrial areas like Thuringia being said to be hurt badly. The social ramifications of this was that people had lost their sources of income, and as a consequence, many fell into poverty. Crop prices fell by up to 60% as poverty reduced demand. As a consequence of the economic hardship, many turned to political extremism. In 1930, the Müller-SPD-led coalition collapsed over failure to agree whether cuts in the welfare budget should be made. Such crises reduced the belief in democracy. As such, many people were dissatisfied with the Weimar Republic and sought more radical solutions to their problems. Legal restrictions made it impossible for the Reichsbank to print more money. This was because of the legacy of hyperinflation in 1923. So government cut back their spending as tax revenues had fallen. Coalitions found it difficult to agree where the cuts should be made. From 1928 to 1933, war victims' pensions were cut by a third, angering thousands. Brüning pursued protectionism by raising the costs of imports. So in covering the bankruptcy, which was a consequence of the Great Depression, we know that by 1932, 18,000 farmers had gone bankrupt, 50,000 businesses had gone bankrupt, and in 1931, 5 major banks had closed down. And in terms of levels of unemployment, we know that by 1929, unemployment was standing at 1,600,000, and in 1930, this had jumped to 3 million, and again had jumped to 6 million by 1933. And the reason that this hit Germany so hard was because the US had recalled loans following the Wall Street crash. For example, we know that the major withdrawal of investment in late September 1930 may have contributed to the rise in the votes for extremist parties. These loans were particularly important for industry and agriculture, and it was clear that German banks were not able to find money from elsewhere. As a result, the Great Depression ensued, and the middle classes were hit hardest. And we must remember that this was because Germany still had to keep on paying the reparations to the Allied powers. Thanks for listening to this podcast about the impact of the Great Depression on Germany. Next, we're going to talk about the political situation during this tumultuous time.